Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to apologize. I have a cold, so I have a backup plan. So if I start hacking and coughing, then I probably will leave. But I want to welcome you all here today. This is just kind of a informal question answer. Let's kind of go over some focal points of the special event permits. We had a lot of feedback about individuals saying in our meeting and our video, there's not a whole lot that talks about special events. So we kind of developed this little meeting today to just kind of go over some of those things, offer you opportunity to ask any questions that you would like to ask. I think most everyone in here is a permitted vendor. Is there anybody that's not? I don't want to put you on the spot. Okay, so some of this hopefully will fill in. If you have any questions afterwards, we're more than welcome to help you get you started, okay? I see another person coming, so I'm just going to hold off for a second. So in the packet, at the very first page, or second page, I guess it would be, at the very top is a special event permit link. This is for the application. That takes you to the page. You can pull the beach selection chart, FDEP permit guidelines, the FDEP application form, and then below that is the Walton County Code link. So if you go to that link, it'll take you to the code. It also will take you to the homepage where you can download the video for this meeting if you ever want to review it again. That page also has all of our contact information for beach code enforcement. As you see at the very bottom is Melanie and myself, and if you have not met Melanie, I'm sure most of you have already talked to her. This is Melanie back here. She handles most of our special event permits, the applications, issues the permits. So definitely feel free to use that anytime. If you have any questions about anything, we are always here to ask any questions that you have. Email us, call us, stop by, whatever you need. Brian Kellenberger, which is right here, is our Director of Beach Operations. He manages all of us, code enforcement, beach ambassadors, and beach maintenance. We also have a few of our beach ambassadors here today. So they're kind of popping in and out. And we also have Dave Goodman. He's one of our code enforcement officers. Also, we have representation from South Walton Fire Department. If any of you are dealing with bonfires, I'm sure you've probably talked to Julie. She's the gal over there. So on the third page, there is some contact information that might prove useful to you. These are just contacts that we've developed over the past couple of years of people that we are in constant contact with, the state parks, the sheriff's office, South Walton Turtle Watch. We kind of wanted to open this up to you. If you ever need that information, it's there. If you can't find any information, definitely, again, feel free to call us. We'll gladly help you guys out in getting in touch with the person that you need to get in touch with. So as most of you are permitted vendors, you probably have already received a copy of the code, the Chapter 22, Waterways and Beach Activities. And we always encourage you to make sure that you're reading through that and understand that. If you have any questions, any clarification that you need, definitely feel free to call us. Today we're just going to kind of go over the special event code. At the very beginning of that code, there's a whole section of definitions. It talks about vending and sea turtle season, and one of them is the definitions for special events. In that definition, it says any use, activity, or event conducted or promoted on the beach that would constitute a violation of any provision of this article or any rule or regulation issued under the authority of this article. Any activity or event that is organized and promoted to attract and is likely to attract a crowd of more than 30 persons to a certain place on a beach at a certain time under circumstances that are likely to create a need for additional police, life-saving, or other services. Or any activity or event on the beach that is promoted or sponsored by commercial interests and will advertise or promote private commercial interests. That's vendors, i.e. Special events does not include private parties on private property with no commercial gain or benefit, hosted and attended by the owner of the property. So that kind of helps clarify the definition of it. If you guys ever have any questions, and at the end of this, if jot down any questions that you might have about any of this, this kind of helps open up some question-answer ideas. In the Chapter 2259, that is our special events section of the code. Policy and objective. This article is intended to ensure broad beach usage by allowing temporary uses of the beach for purposes which otherwise would be prohibited. These special uses would be allowed by a permit that waives certain restrictions under specific conditions which still protect the public health, safety, and welfare. The permitting process is intended to provide a convenient procedure to be followed by beach users. B, permit is required. No person shall organize, promote, or conduct a special event except as provided in a special event permit issued pursuant to this section. It shall be unlawful for a vendor to organize, promote, or conduct a special event on behalf of a client without being listed on the permit application. And most of you are pretty good about that. Most of you already kind of know that situation. C, permits for special events. A permit for special event, according to its terms, may constitute a temporary waiver of one or more provisions of this chapter, which means that there are certain allowances outside of the normal code. For example, tents. For special events, you can have a larger size tent, which would not normally be used or allowed under the regular code. Permits are required for special events with 30 or more people expected. Permits are required for all weddings that are to be held on a public beach access, so as not to have more than one wedding taking place at the same time and place. The county shall create an application for the permit that details the items allowed and prohibited for use on the beach during special events. The permit shall require the applicant to provide, at a minimum, the following information. And if any of you have actually filled out one of the applications, all of these things are on there and they are required to be filled out. A, date and time of the special event. B, location of the special event. C, description of the special event. And D, anticipated crowd size. E, sponsor of the special event. And that sponsor actually means like a vendor that's going to be hosting or providing services there. F, written consent from the property owner. G, any other information required by the county. H, the location of the walkover or access to the beach that will be used for the event and permission from the owner if necessary. I, detailed equipment list and layout to include quantity of tables, chairs, lights, and other fixtures or equipment. And J, a parking plan. Special events over 100 people will require the special event sponsor to provide security and adequate parking. And this is one of those areas that Melanie is really good at. She receives most of the applications. And when she looks through there, she always looks at what kind of attendees, what kind of a crowd, and the parking that's available at that location. Last year, we actually took the time and we went to every beach access and looked at the parking, looked at the space available, and she's really good at if the application says something like 60 people and there's only 2 parking spots, she's going to bring that to their attention or your attention to let you know, hey, there's not a whole lot here. What is your backup plan? If you are filling out the special event application, make sure that you fill that in to help kind of alleviate that problem. Special event sponsors are required to clean the beach immediately after the event has been completed. No special event shall be located within 100 feet of an active turtle nest. And I also want to make sure that when you are having a special event with a bonfire, it's 200 feet. So make sure that, they do have a measuring wheel that they'll go out and actually look at it. But just kind of keep that, cognizant of that when the turtle nesting season actually starts getting underway. No special event shall be located. I just read that one. We're moving on. The fee. The fee for the special event permit shall be set by resolution of the board and changed as necessary. Each special event shall require a separate permit. And below that, I've added that resolution that talks about the establishment of fees. Most of you are aware that they are based off this number of attendees, so they're a little bit more structured. That has not changed since that was initiated. On the fourth page, we created a guidelines, and this is kind of like the do's and don'ts for special event permits. And I'm not going to go through each one of these because most of these are pretty much outlined in the code. It's just a little bit more stipulated as far as absolutely no glass, no Chinese lanterns, those kind of things. So if you're holding your special event, make sure you are reading through those guidelines and you're relaying that to your clients. As you read through there, keep a note. At the end, we'll kind of do a question and answer. If there's something you don't understand, we'll definitely go over that. One of the things that there seemed to be some confusion on this year was about the miscellaneous operations permit. That was a new permit that we instituted based off of a lot of feedback from the post-vendor season meeting workshop from vendors. And that miscellaneous operations permit is based off of individuals who are not setting product up on the beach. That is our photographers, that's our officiants, that is our sand sculpture, yoga. So if you are setting up any kind of equipment, arbors, chairs, umbrellas, tables, any of those things, you'll still need to have a regular delivery permit, which is $750. There was a lot of confusion this year when some of our wedding vendors came in I thought I was supposed to have the $150, not the $750. So I just want to kind of clarify that with you, of the differences there. On the website, we have a list of what's the word I'm looking for? The permit authorization form, the beach selection chart, those things are made available to you. And on the next page after the guidelines is a special event permit authorization form. This is if you are working on any kind of property that has an upland homeowner, you will need to have their permission to have a special event on their property. Now, things are probably going to be changing in July. I don't know if any of you are aware about the changes in customary use, but you will still need to definitely have this in hand. That's going to probably pose a few changes for some of you, so make sure that you are using this form. This will need to be signed, and it either needs to be notarized or accompanied with a copy of a driver's license for this to be valid. You can always send this back to Melanie once this has been filled out. If you ever have any questions about it, again, feel free to call us. The next thing that is in here is about the DEP permit. This is for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. This permit does not cost you a thing to obtain, but it is required especially during turtle season between May 1st and October 31st. If you have any kind of lighting, if you have disco balls and disco lights going on, dance floors, anything of that nature will have to be approved by DEP. Reginald Bradley is the contact person, and his information is in that contact list. If you ever have any questions about it, you're more than welcome to contact him or us about it. This is kind of a guideline as to how to go online and obtain that permit. It's actually fairly easy. This is kind of confusing what they presented to us, because when you go into log in, it will talk about a build tab that you're supposed to click on. It doesn't make sense. This kind of walks you through it a little bit better. If you are doing any kind of lighting, if you are putting up any type of large tent, if you have anything, dance floors, stages, anything that you're going to be setting up on the beach has to be approved by them. At the back is a beach selection chart. This was something that we created and hopefully will prove to be useful. We kind of used this to begin with for Melanie and I to remember what the accesses were, what kind of parking was there. Then we started sharing it with other people, such as Julie. And we sent this out to everybody. If you didn't get a copy of it and you want us to send you one, please let us know and we'll definitely do that. But this proves to be very useful for a lot of people, that they can determine what kind of need that they're going to need for their wedding, their event. It talks about which areas that special events are allowed, which ones need authorization, where the bonfires are allowed, what kind of parking, what kind of amenities. So hopefully this will give you guys some insight. You can share this with your clients. Yes?
On this chart, what does the check mark mean?
That means like a yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So like on this very first one, on the first page, like Phillips Inlet Beach 1A, that check mark means a special event is allowed to be held there.
Okay.
If there's not a check mark, then there's like not a bathroom or that it's not ADA compatible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dave?
Does water have access?
Yes.
Walking? There's no check mark for the vendors there.
I apologize. I'll make sure we get that added. Sure, not a problem.
Sorry to split hairs here, but just to make sure I fully understand the chart.
Sure.
No means no, and blank means no.
Correct.
And this is the same for beach vending, right? So like, if it says property owner permission required, does that mean each vendor has to get storefront owners?
Yes, so if you want to hold an event at a location, at that location, they would have to have special event permit authorization.
But what about the beach chairs or something like that?
Well, this isn't really for that type of vending, but yes, they would still have to have it. This is for special events and bonfires. This really isn't for like our normal chair rental and umbrella rental. Although the same principle would apply, they would have to have a site-specific permit for that. One of the other things I wanted to address as well, there was a lot of discussion last fall at one of our workshops about photographers, that their feedback was because of the time frame that they're limited to do photography, and if any of you understand anything about photography, one of the things that they complained about was while they were out doing their session, that code enforcement actually would stop and interrupt, and it made everybody feel uncomfortable. There was a lot of suggestions last year as to how can we implement something, a protocol, that would kind of alleviate that moment. And we have talked about several different things. One of the things that was actually brought up was like those placard cards that the reporters and photojournalists used to use back in the 40s and 50s. No offense to anyone, but people are very crafty. As a human species, we are very, very crafty. And we know it would be just a matter of time before people would try to veer away from being compliant and kind of doing their own thing. And honestly, we haven't come up with anything that we feel like would be foolproof. So this is what my suggestion to you would be as a photographer, any vendor whatsoever. Get to know our code officers. They are wonderful people. They're very nice. And the more that you start interacting with them, the more that they're going to remember you. So if you are a photographer, get out, talk to those people, and then they'll be able to recognize you. Most of them have a law enforcement background, and they have this uncanny ability to remember faces. So once you start introducing yourself, interacting with them, they're going to remember you. They're going to remember you already have a permit, that you're good to go, because we understand that time frame in the morning and in the evening when the light's perfect and diffused. We understand that there's, a time limit there. So, but again, I would offer that to any vendor. Get to know our code officers. That's going to help you because they're there to help you as much as anyone else. Are there any questions at this point? Go ahead.
The comment you just made about photographers and folks being a little uncomfortable with the officers on the beach stopping and checking things out, and you mentioned that the officers, if you get to know them, should be able to recognize us. I'm with Rosemary Beach, and we have an in-house beach service. We operate on our private property, and so we're pretty much the same guys in the same shirts, operating all day and sometimes bonfire in the evenings. We comply fully as we understand it with the permitting process. We got a letter of clarification issued last year by the county attorney, and we reviewed that yesterday before this meeting. We were pretty confident that we're compliant with the instructions in that letter. But we still have pretty regularly the code enforcement officer stop, and interrupt is probably a strong word for most of these occasions, but on some occasions it is probably a good word, interrupt, with bonfire events, check on the permits. And the nature of the interaction varies depending on the officer, from very friendly as you described, to not so friendly. And I would like to suggest, I would be glad to sit down with you and make specific suggestions with you experience this meeting. I'd just like to suggest that process can be improved. I'm confident.
Okay. So first, let me respond this way. Anytime that there's a bonfire or a special event, our code officers are tasked to review those permits. They're asked to go through each night. They are given a list of the bonfires and special events. And our code officers are given a task to do to make sure that everyone is compliant. Now, if there's any type of situation where it's not a friendly interaction, you feel that maybe there's something a little bit more of a personal nature going on, always feel free to get in touch with either Brian Kellenberger or Jeff McVeigh. He's our lead code officer. We don't want to have that interaction where we have a negative rapport by any means.
And we generally need and I'm sorry to start back.
No, that's fine.
To give you all the information. Those interactions that have rose to the level of being unfriendly, we documented with an email physically to Jeff, and so we can provide those to you for again. We want this process of improving the process to be friendly.
Sure.
So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brian, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that we had a few issues last year, and I understand we don't want to have them again this year. I think we've all come to an understanding of the different types of bonfire permits or bonfire events that they put on there. And as I tell everybody, if there is ever a situation where you're not treated with polite, professional, courteous service, I expect you to pick up the phone and call me.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
You're saying that there's tax for each event to check the permit. It's the same as Rosemary. We can have our own one permit, two permits for the beach and everything. And we diligently send the spreadsheet in, updating any bonfires, any weddings. So I'm assuming the code enforcement gets a copy of that and says, okay, yep, it's the same thing. Friday, Saturday is a wedding, some people. So if they see, if they do write up and see, they shouldn't need to stop and get the permit because we've complied with got the permit. They've seen that before and they've got the spreadsheet, so they wouldn't be stopping at that point. Right?
Okay, so in certain situations, yes, they will still stop by. There's tends to be a situation at times where people will say, we're having this type of event, this number of people, and these are the things that we're going to be, the description of your event. This is how it's going to be. And when code enforcement shows up, they'll see things that are a little bit different. There'll be a different number of attendees. There will be things that are kind of going on that maybe weren't listed on the permit. So they want to verify those things to make sure that everyone is in compliance. It's not meant to interrupt. It's not meant to cause confusion. It's not meant to, create a negative vibe. They still have a job that they have to do. That's what the county commissioners have asked. That's what Brian has asked. That's what Jeff McVeigh has asked, for them to do these things.
I can understand that if things look totally different. It says on the spreadsheet, 30 people was up to 70, and now there's a stand ceremony, there wasn't one before, then that's understandable. But everything is the same, there shouldn't be to stop. And I appreciate if they do start, like I spoke on Monday, and he said, oh, we were out in the alternative January 27th and had like, really? I didn't know about that. So it wasn't on the spreadsheet, but nothing stopped them, no problem. So I'm just saying if everything, if they look at their sheets and they've got the permit, they've seen it, they've seen the need of the permit a lot of times, and then the spreadsheet says this and then it looks like, yes, so then they shouldn't be this one.
Yeah, let me address that, Trish.
Sure.
I agree with you. Just verifying that it is a permitted event probably shouldn't need to stop. There's other things they check for when they do stop. Glass, like Trish mentioned, things that have been done differently than what were listed on the special event permit. Part of that is because prior to us taking over the permitting authority, people would actually go out and change their permits after they receive them from the permit authority. And so it's not that we think everybody is purposely doing things that they didn't agree to do. It's that we have an obligation to make sure that what is being done in a special event permit. One thing I have asked all officers to do is approach special event permits in such a manner as to not interrupt it. Okay, now, I'm not out on the beach every night, and I don't get to experience every interaction. And most of the ones that I do get to experience are people that have called to complain that they weren't, treated as they thought they should. And I address every one of those complaints with the manager and with the individual officer that is accused of it. We also keep very detailed records of any contact we have with anybody. I review all the case notes. But bottom line is that you as a beach special event person, and particularly on property that you control, should be treated with polite, professional, courteous service. But you should also expect that our officers will get out and interact with you to confirm, verify that what you've listed in your special event permit is actually what's being done. And it kind of goes back to what she said earlier is that as you get to know these officers, so certain officers work here at beach. Highly encourage you, just like you would do with a police officer that's running a subdivision beat. Get to know that person. They then understand you better, and interactions will obviously be better. I mean, because you do a wonderful job at your special event permits. Not everybody does as good a job as you and Mr. Bailey do. I would expect that since y'all are associated with a resort community, that you have standards you have to keep up to be in good standing with that resort community. In the case of David, he's in charge of that community. Other people are doing special events on property that they're not in control of, and to be quite honest with you, they may not have the same, responsibility to do it right, and in fact will exploit the opportunity. And so, in a lot of cases, you think, well, why does that bother y'all, Mr. Code Enforcement Officer? And the reason is because it then interrupts or distracts other people's experience on the beach. And our job is to, make the experience for everybody on the beach good.
Here's a question of wedding event. Wedding event on private property, but for commercial games. So in other words, it's a private catering wedding event planner for commercial games using private property for a wedding event. How do you manage the parking and how do you check on the parking? For example, a very narrow strip of private property, a wedding event for 100 people, where do you put the cars?
Well, we don't put the cars.
I know, but where, how do you check, how do you check?
One of the things is when the special event application comes through, like I said, Melanie is wonderful at, verifying what is your parking plan. And we always tell people, you cannot park on people's property or in their driveway or on their yard. We hear it all. So we encourage them to always have a backup plan. How do we enforce it? We, other than being on the beach itself, it's hard for us to actually enforce that.
I think I'll check with Melanie on the particular, thing that I'm concerned about, and then we'll find out how to handle
Yeah.
the parking.
Barbara, are you referring to special events on the beach, or are you referring to special events that may be held in a upland property situation?
On the beach.
On the beach,
The wedding
okay.
will be on the beach, but
Right.
choosing private property.
Yeah. One of the reasons we took over the permitting authority is because I felt confident that we could resolve a lot of problems at the permitting level as opposed to code enforcement on the beach level. All right, and so with this handy dandy thing here, well, like they said, they developed it for themselves. And the reason is, one of the, 2 years ago, I got some codes revised associated with this new permitting authority. And one of the key components is what I call a viable parking plan. And so we're now familiar, Beach Code Enforcement has always been familiar with the amenities and what is available there. And so let's just use an example. Ray's Multi-Mountain in Grayton Beach. That's one of our neighborhood beach accesses off to the east side of, or west side of Grayton Beach proper. So when somebody comes to us with a special event permit and they say we're going to have a wedding party of 50 people, bells and whistles go off and they say, and we automatically say, okay, what is your parking plan? Well, the truth is there is no parking plan there. And so if their parking plan does not include some sort of shuttle service from, we have a remote parking place just north of 30A on 283, and there's other places up there that allow people to park and actually have shuttles, like Chiringo's does that, I think AJ's does some of that. And so if they don't have or cannot demonstrate a viable parking plan, we don't issue them a permit for that. And more importantly, we direct them towards an access that's more appropriate, a regional beach access. And even in those cases, there may not be a viable parking plan. And so back to, I'm sorry, what was your name? I know we've met. Carolyn, yes. That is actually one of the things our code enforcement people are looking at. When they get out of their truck, they're walking around observing. Their instructions are to find the responsible party. Most time they know most of the special event planners, and they'll seek those people out. But they'll also walk up the boardwalk and to check to see what's parking issues are going on. Believe it or not, a lot of times we already know because we've already received complaints from the neighborhood that they have people parking in the bushes. And so, but that's how we do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Sarah, what's the penalty? So how many, if we catch a wedding that is permit,
Mm-hmm.
and all this is going on down there, what happens?
Depends on, what we, so the first one would be, a citation for an unpermitted event, okay? If we catch, so that was another reason why we are trying to establish that special events have to have a sponsor or a permitted vendor, wedding event, special event planner. So if we catch them the second time, it's just like the rest of the fines. They escalated $100 per citation, top out at $500. Recognizing that those fines are small and may not be a mechanism to stop people from doing it. County right now is reviewing what's called a permit revocation process, and we're refining it, but its basic components will be what triggers review of your permit. And so we realize that if we prevent you from being able to pull a permit for a special event, that's probably has more force than the $100 citation or the $500 citation. There may be other areas of the code that they are also out of bounds on or non-compliant on, which would be included in the fine.
How many weddings have you guys ticketed that have not had permits?
I'd have to research that information, and I'll get it back to you. I don't have it right here handy to me, but we do have it all, cataloged in our system.
Same with bonfires.
Same as bonfires?
How many?
Yeah. If you'll give me a day, I'll send that information to you via email. Okay?
Go ahead.
I have a question. So, no glasses allowed on the beach, we know that, but, so in these cases, I actually just ran into this a couple weeks ago. We had guests stick alcohol in there first. Well, because we pulled the permit, technically we did the ticket for that, right? So how do we go about it? They're trying to sneak stuff on the beach, and not get fined for it, because, we tell them the rules, and if they're sneaking it,
Yeah. Can I answer that?
Yeah,
I'll answer that.
sure.
Okay, so our officers have the ability to use discretion, and they're very good at discerning, what is a permitted vendor issue and what is somebody trying to sneak alcohol. If you obviously have, plastic cups, crafts, and all that, and you've made an effort to do it, but we catch a random guest with a beer bottle or a wine bottle, chances are that individual guest will get a written warning. We're required by code to give you notice of violation and then give you an opportunity to cure, unless there is an immediate safety issue. Sometimes, glass in your pocket could be an immediate safety issue, and a lot of it depends on your attitude and how you interact with a code enforcement officer. But that's how it would be. Now, if we consistently find guests at your special events that are doing this, we're probably going to be looking at you a little bit closer, and encouraging, asking, motivating you to make sure your guests understand. And so, like I say, you as a special event permitted vendor need to make sure you have good motivational, tools, skills, whatever, to make sure your guests understand. I know that you're not going to catch everybody, and a lot of times you may have attendees that would fall into the area of not necessarily being invited. You know what I mean? I mean, they may be there as friends or something. I mean, depending on the special event. But the key, the answer to your question is, officers use discretion on how they decide on whether a citation or a written warning is necessary, and who is the recipient of that.
So if, let's say a bride is planning her wedding on the beach, she gets the special event permit, does that cover all the vendors who are also, I mean, they've done their annual fee, but does it cover all the vendors that are doing their thing on the beach as well?
Okay, so that is one of the, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a huge area of confusion. If you have a bride that is pulling the special event application or the permit, each of those vendors that she lists have to have a beach vendor permit. If,
Their annual permit,
Yes, ma'am.
their annual, okay.
yes. If a permitted vendor pulls that special event permit, then they can list the subcontractors under the umbrella of that, and they don't necessarily have to have a beach vending permit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So if the bride decides to have a bonfire the night of her wedding,
Mhm.
do they still need to get a bonfire permit in addition to the special event permit?
Yes, anytime that there's a bonfire included, it has to have a bonfire permit.
And if the bonfire party is 50 or more people, do they need to get a special event permit?
Yes. Yes, anytime that you have 30 or more attendees at any event, it would have to have a special event permit. If there's a bonfire included, it also has to have a bonfire permit.
And I get that, but the price is outrageous. Nobody will ever have a bonfire of 50 people and pay a special event permit. And nobody, a bonfire company can't afford to make money. I mean, there's no money there if there's that much, you know what I'm saying? They have to do the bonfire permit, then they have to do a special event permit. You're up to
It's a lot, and believe me, we do issue a lot of
$150
those.
up to 30 people.
We do issue a lot of those.
50 people at a bonfire.
Mm-hmm.
What's the cost? I mean, that's expensive, right?
$250 for more than 30, so you get more.
How much? I mean, you know, I think it should be looked at in that, you know, let's face it, I mean, a bonfire isn't always, you know, just 10 people are sitting around. Especially those after a wedding. And, you know, the wedding people, they love the beaches. They want to have, you know, events on the beach. And, you know, that's just, I think it's really expensive and we get requests for those and we just, you know.
Well, we will make note of that, because that's one of those things that definitely at the end of the season, when we have our public workshop, we take all of this feedback and kind of go through it and determine what would be a good change. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely make note of that.
Then what happens is they do it anyway and they don't get a permit.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that are violent because they're like, I'm not spending $500.
Yep.
And that's, I'm just saying because it's just too expensive. If
Yeah.
you make it more reasonable, then they would be more likely to get the permit.
Yeah, one of the things we've done over the last couple of years is we're slowly differentiating code between public property and privately held property. Recognizing that some privately held property, you know, has annual permits, they have commercial entitlements. Some of it is single-family dwellings where they don't have that. And then, you know, county code is not, you know, certainly not meant to generate revenue. It's meant to generate compliant behavior so that everybody that lives within a community, you know, is not affected by somebody trying to do something that may not be necessarily allowed within that land use district. See what I'm saying? But that's a good point. I mean, I get your point about it, and like I say, the trend we've had for the last 2 years is recognizing that we have different types of beach, different ownership relationships, and all that. So.
Well, as the, you know, houses are getting bigger, you know, one house sleeps 30 people, they're already over the, you know, I mean, if a house decided to have a bonfire for their group on the beach.
Yeah. Well, that gets into a whole nother discussion about, you know, is a house that holds 30 people, is it appropriate, does it have commercial entitlements? Because what you're talking about is a commercial, you know, entitlement then. If you're doing something for profit, I mean, if you're having 30 people at a house, once again, we're talking about land development codes and comprehensive plan now. We're not talking about beach-related codes. But the event house has always been an issue, or been an issue for the last 25 years. And there's been certain codes adopted, challenged, rescinded. But that's really
Renting a beach house that has 30 people is not commercial for a homeowner to do it.
Pardon me?
A homeowner renting out a house that can handle 30 people is not a commercial event. It's legally not. So,
Legally not, and I'd have to go review more of the land development code to argue or discuss it effectively. But I think the person next to you would probably have a different opinion of that. I mean, if you're making, if you.
my concern is that we have a lot more bigger houses and things being developed.
Right.
Like that. And everything we do on special events is dictated by the number of people.
Mhm.
And if you have a house that sleeps 30 and they just want to go have a bonfire on the beach, which is not an abnormal thing for renters to do, you know, 30 people, for them it's not a big deal. They're all one big family or whatever they've got going on there. It's not a commercial event. They just came down here to rent a house or whatever.
Yeah. I think what needs to be defined is it a commercial event or not a commercial event? I mean, if you're bringing down $75,000 a year in revenue for renting out your property, is that a commercial enterprise or not?
And I can tell you legally it's not. I mean, so that's the whole issue. And that's why I get concerned when people start to get, because you got 30 people, you're commercial versus a guy that rents his house that only has 10 people.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It doesn't matter how many people. It's based on, as a homeowner, you get the right to own your property. It's just legally been that way. I just have one other question. On the setup time, 1 hour before event time, has anybody looked at that possibly extending that a little bit more? Because that's really hard for these guys
We give a little leeway on that, on recognizing that event time is not when the wedding starts. And depending on the size of the event, we have a little bit of window on that. What we're trying to prohibit or stop is people saying, I need to set up at noon for a 5 o'clock. And once again, Tricia and Melanie also have ability to use discretion. If it's on a piece of private property and a specific place vendor, we actually give a pretty good amount of leeway on it because it's only affecting your property.
So if they give you an event time, is it, like they say we're doing an event from whatever, 4 to 10? Is it an hour before the time they give you, or the?
Well, in that case, that they would ask, okay, does your event start at 4, or are you telling me 4 because your event starts at 6?
Right.
And if everybody's truthful, then, okay, no problem. Once again, if it's on public beach, we stick pretty close to allowing really an event 2 hours before the actual event starts, and then we give you an hour before that. It depends on where it's at and how many events we have going on. Once again, if it's a wedding event, we only allow one public beach asset. If it's not a wedding event, it's a bonfire event, then South Walton Fire District has a limit on how many bonfires they list. And so we kind of look at everything that's going on at that one time, what time of year it is. I mean, obviously at Ed Walleen, there's a lot of other people going there that aren't associated with the special event. And so we stick pretty close to, if it is a wedding, we want to provide you appropriate time to get it set up, but not compromise the whole beach.
And to add on to what Brian's saying, when we get the application, we look at your description of events. So if you are including that you're putting up a tent and you have 80 chairs to set up, those are the things that we use discretion. Okay, that's fine. We can accommodate that. So it really is a matter of looking at everything on that application and having those conversations with you.
Well, that's what people ask, what time should I put? Should I allow this at a time, or do I just say, I'm getting married at 5, it's 5? That's why I was wondering, what time do you want us to list? That's fine.
I would include the setup time, but be reasonable on it, especially if it's public property. Be reasonable on it. But before, we had in the past people saying, my event starts at 10 in the morning. And we know it doesn't. It's a wedding. It's going to be at sunset. And the reason is they're trying to reserve public property. And that's the one thing about special events on public property is it clearly states that this is not a reservation of public property. It is a opportunity to use public property provided there is space available. We know that special event people often go down and ask people to move, and if the people are accommodating, it's no issue. If the people decide they don't want to move, the code enforcement's not going to come down and ask anybody to move. So.
This question is a little outside your special event, the tiki parties. Now that our guests are coming down, stores are still selling tiki parties, and they're just not coming down and have good time and buy them. If there's no permit involved, they're not doing it. So as a resident, do I call code enforcement and just say I'm seeing tiki torches? Like, is it public, like Ed Walleen, or is it in front of the house? Is there a distinction? Private, or is customary use private property?
South Walton, go ahead.
No, I was just
Sorry.
going to say, anytime that there's tiki torches set up on the beach requires a bonfire permit.
Okay, whether it's public or private.
Right.
Okay, and then so that would be a call to code enforcement.
Yeah, if you're seeing that, let me ask you this: Are you asking to verify if someone has a permit?
Well, I would be, it's not my right to go up to them, but many times I see tiki torches on the beach. And I guess I'm just hoping that, so they can do that, tiki torches with permit.
If they're, yeah,
Do you see a lot of that? Do people do that?
yes, we do. Excuse me one second.
All right.
Robert, do you mean tiki torches? Yeah. Do you mean tiki torches by themselves or associated with a bonfire?
No, just by themselves.
By themselves. So somebody having a special event, or somebody having some kind of party,
Yeah.
and they're all sitting down there enjoying themselves, they got some tiki torches?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You can feel free to send those in through our complaint system. More than likely, if it's, one of the things that was mentioned before is that people on private property that had title to the main high water line, if they're having a event, they're there sponsoring it, it's not considered a public or a special event. Okay? And so, you know, in that case, they are still subject to what's called an open flame, and that it would be a South Walton Fire District permitted item. What they could have is an annual permit, all right? So if you own to the main high water line or you have title to beach property, you are able to obtain what's called an annual bonfire permit, and I don't believe there's any cost, is that correct? What the requirement is that you have to notify South Walton Fire District when you're going to have a bonfire. All right, and when you get that permit, they would probably explain that that would also include, that tiki torches are considered an open flame. Yep.
Go ahead.
This is, I guess, a kind of a general question, or general comment that I'll use the example that we just talked about a few minutes ago, and that's the start and stop times listed on this page right here. The heading on the top of the page, these guidelines and according to Walton County. The start and stop times are not listed anywhere in chapter 22. And there's been comment made a few times that the officers are using discretion, and there are things in the application process that aren't in the ordinance. And what this is adding up to, in my opinion, from the experience in Rosemary, and I've heard some other comments here today that lead me to believe it's probably happening across the beaches, that the way that the ordinance itself is written and all the supporting documents, the applications, the procedures of calling things in, putting them on a calendar, some of the comments made by you all today about the folks who don't comply and people being a little sneaky, it adds up to, again, that comment I made in my first comment, which is code enforcement officers are stopping by to visit the bonfires and special events and weddings that are occurring on our beach. And we're being asked to produce documents and things like that. And we're frankly getting tired of it.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to make a general suggestion that during this season, and we'd be very happy to sit down and participate with you guys, with hours into it, get the ordinance and the application straightened out. Give the officers on the beach very clear instructions, minimize the amount of discretion. The answer to a question of, well, you know, get to know them. If in my neighborhood, a county deputy stopped me every time I left my neighborhood and asked to see my driver's license and insurance and stuff like that, there would be a problem after about the third or fourth time.
Correct.
So the beach is no different. We have a right, particularly on the private property, to expect that we can enjoy our property without being constantly interrupted. I very much support code enforcement stopping and checking on things going on in public beaches. I myself don't live on the Gulf. When I go down to the beach with my family, it irritates me that someone sets up and puts their elbows out, and I got to move my kids and my wife, and you know, there's things going on the beach. It irritates me. I would love for you guys to spend more time focused on that and less time, frankly, wasting time. The way the process is written, if we've got our annual permits, our permit, special event permit, we call it in. County attorney's letter from last year explains that those special event permits create exceptions to chapter 22.
Right.
And the application, actually the ordinance says, the ordinance does say that those special event permits will include a list of the things that are allowed and prohibited. Your application process and the permits that I have are actual permits that have y'all's handwritten numbers and things on, don't include that there. So that results in this idea that we
They don't include what list?
they don't include a list of things that we're allowed to do and not allowed to do. They include date, time, and the requirement that we call things in and put it on the calendar. So
Right. The list they're referring to is that, but the basic interpretation of that section that says is basically it says you're allowed to do things that aren't normally allowed by code. It doesn't mean that we'll give you a list of things that will be allowed by code. It means that you have the opportunity to list things on there that you would like to do that are not allowed by code, and then through the special event permit application processing, it is then either allowed or not allowed.
Brian, I'm
Right.
Section 22-59, paragraph C, subparagraph 3, says, "The county shall create an application for the permit that details the items allowed and prohibited for the use on the beach during special events."
Mm-hmm.
So I have a copy of our permit, and it has handwritten, Rosemary Beach Service bonfire, I'm sorry, this is the, this one from the county staff. This is from, the email was from No Reply at Citrus Plus. It listed as Melvin Walters.
Mm-hmm.
Handwritten on here is annual special event permit. Permit number's written. The event date of 02/01/2018, and then there's handwritten through 2/1/19. It has the event beginning 1 hour, setup can only begin 1 hour before event time, et cetera. Take down must be completed. Again, it's not in the code anywhere, it's written on the permit.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes on the second page to describe, description of the event. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that just says truly not completed. So, you know, I'm not seeing that there's a list of things that an officer can drive up and decide whether our thing is in compliance or not. Basically, all he has to go by is the fact that if we send our updated calendar in, again, we documented in emails to you a couple times that the officer indicated, well, I wasn't aware there was an event. We can prove we sent it in.
Mm-hmm.
And now, frequently our bonfires, the smaller bonfires, I've got one staff person attending that bonfire.
Right.
And I've got my guy tied up for, 5 minutes, whatever it is.
Mhm.
I'm talking to the code enforcement officer, and I got a family that might have little kids sitting there around the bonfire, and I'm not attending to it. So I really, I really want to encourage you all. I'm offering, we'll sit down with you. I'm pretty confident the other
Mhm.
resort properties will sit down with you and work through this process so that, we're cool with a wave, a nod, officer driving by,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But just getting out and having to what percentage, Laney, would you say of bonfires we interact for more than a few seconds with it?
Generally, I guess about half, I usually check.
Mhm.
Or beach attendants there at the bonfire, when the code enforcement stop by. Sometimes it's, they just kind of walk right on, they wave, their windows are up, we can't see in, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they stop by, and sometimes it's friendly, hey, how you doing, because they know each other. Like you said, we've got
Mhm.
code enforcement,
Mhm.
so I always encourage our staff.
Yeah.
to be friendly to code enforcement, that we
Mhm.
can keep that. But that should be a requirement of how well we get along with code enforcement with stop and go.
It's not. It was a suggestion that I think was a good suggestion because I practice it with any authority that I have to deal with. It's not because I'm required to do it. It's because I'm smart enough to realize that it's a good practice.
It is, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
But, also for them to stop by as often they do after we've taken every step we're required to take.
Mhm.
Sometimes we miss that.
Yep.
Outside of our control, then I know for a fact that our guys have been told, well, because I didn't know, and I need to see your permit, and next time I need to know or you're gonna get a ticket. That's not a fair statement.
Right.
And I'm sure it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it is, it's not our,
Yeah.
we're regular when we've done anything, we're
Yeah.
required to do.
Are y'all the only entity that does bonfires on Rosemary's Beach? You are?
We are.
I thought y'all had a provision that homeowners could do their own bonfires on the.
We can allow them to do it through us.
Okay. So on Rosemary Beaches now, if there's a bonfire out there, you as Rosemary Beach, you will be the person that is in charge of that bonfire.
There are two types of bonfires.
Mhm.
Owners themselves, because they have an ownership interest on a common area.
Right.
You may with the HOA bonfire.
Right.
They can contact us and say, hey, I'm Smith, I'm in this house, I want
Mhm.
that bonfire, I'm bringing my kids and
Right.
our friends, whatever. And we say, great, okay, we call that in for, to Walton County under our permit.
Right.
To the fire district, and we get our own calendar.
Mhm.
And so it's all documented. If a renter of a home in Rosemary wants to have a bonfire, then they have to hire the beach staff to do that bonfire.
Right. And I think that's the problem that we were having a year or two ago is that there was some transferring of that annual permit right to renters. And I think y'all got a good handle on it now, and I thought that we had interacted, and I understand that you're still getting some interaction with code enforcement that's probably not comfortable to you. And so, David, I'm going to take up your offer of sitting down with you, and me and you and Jeff and Lanny will sit down, and we'll come to what I call a fair and equal agreement of how we're going to interact together, okay? And by all means, man, I understand it's y'all's beach. We understand that too. As code enforcement officers, oftentimes we get complaints from within a resort community about issues going on with other people in that resort community that may or may not have that right to do it. In other resort communities, they sort of appreciate that we let them know when there's something going on that they didn't know about. I don't think it happens much on Rosemary Beach. And I would, if I go back and look at complaints, that we get, I would probably find very few complaints from Rosemary Beach homeowners against Rosemary Beach homeowners. But I may find some. But let's do sit down, because I want to eliminate the problem. I thought we did a good job last year of getting better at eliminating it, and I'm hoping that our conversation today is trying to be proactive and not have it again this season. But let's sit down here in the next week or so. I'll give you a holler, and let's get a time, and me and Jeff will come down and sit down with y'all, okay? Yep.
Between Southall Fire Department and code and getting the information from the call-ins to the code enforcement officers. I knew there was a period where there was some discrepancies, where something didn't get called in according to the code enforcement officer, but on our side we did. And Sandy had to do research on it, find the voicemails, find the interactions or the calls.
Yeah.
And go to the code enforcement and say, yeah, it was. So, where are we now with that? Is that getting better?
Well, I'm going to let South Walton Fire District answer that one.
We had a meeting actually yesterday, with, the Turtle people and the TDC and us trying to get all, make sure we're all on the same page. We're all getting the same information at the same time through a, interactive, GIS.
Our GIS system.
Yes, which will help that. We'll be able to, or let's just use the turtles as an example. Somebody sees a turtle nest, code enforcement goes out, gets the coordinates, puts it on the map, so then everybody sees it at the same time. When we get and this won't be with the annual report, but when the start coming in, when we get it, we'll put it on the map. If there's a special event, they'll put it on the map, so we'll all see everything at the same time, so that hopefully won't happen anymore. Code enforcement will get that information off the website. We'll pick it up.
Answer your question, Dave, is that, we had 3,200 permitted bonfires last year, somewhere around there. There's going to be a few times where information is not exchanged completely, okay? We're working on refining those systems so that we get 100% accuracy rate. But you know as well as I know that doesn't happen. And when it does happen, our department will be quick to understand if we have made an error or not made an error, okay? And like I say, if it was a monetary fine, strike against your company, it will be quickly erased or recompensated, and apology extended. But like I say,
You guys handled it, but it was on the beach.
I agree.
That,
Yeah.
the guests uncomfortable and everything else. It was all, fixed the next day.
Was this the one that was to the west of Miramar Regional Beach Access?
I couldn't
Okay.
on that side. We're gone. I do all the 30 days, which, is triple from last year.
Right. I remember a few instances where an annual permit had expired, and
And that's been resolved.
right. Temple.
I just have a quick question on bonfires, I'm thinking about, if a renter wants to have a bonfire, last minute notice, or like on a Saturday, Sunday, is there a way to get a permit? It's just, there's not a system for that. Are you looking at
We are working on an automated system, so that will happen. So we'll think about that. And hopefully
the date.
On the special event application or the permit itself.
How do you do a permit at the time if you don't know if they didn't ask for one?
Because it would be actually on the application.
On the special event application.
This is a,
Form is what you said.
this is a property authorization form. And so, if somebody was renting your property and they wanted to have a special event, they would have to get you to sign this, and it has a place for the date of the event.
Right.
And then the specifics of the event would be on the actual special event application.
On their application.
Right.
Anyone else?
Are you gonna have another meeting after July 1st?
For special events or for anything? You know, this one, you know, my office is right outside where Trish and Melanie work. I observe what's going on a daily basis. And so I spoke with Trish and I said, do you think it would be advantageous to hold a special event workshop? Sure, Brian, I think it would be. And so that's how I do business, is I assess, see what's going on. If we have, you know, a lot of confusion going on in our processes, then I would like to hold a public workshop. I appreciate everybody attending today. We have pretty good attendance, but to be honest with you, we have 300 vendors, 300 permitted vendors. I don't know the breakdown of special event permitted vendors. A lot of people aren't here today, you know, because they do what?
It's not mandatory, they're gonna go.
Well, no, I don't want to make it mandatory. You know, I really don't want my preseason vending meetings to be mandatory, to be honest with you. I would like for people to want to come and understand and everybody work in concert together. I realize that's, you know, probably not going to happen, but,
I think it's good that you guys do this, it helps all of us.
yeah. But to answer your question is, if there's a need for it, we can have another workshop by all means to get out information and allow people to ask questions. You know, a lot of times you don't think about questions till you hear something else. So I like these kind of events or meetings where it's kind of a open forum type meeting.
Yeah, I do think it will affect, well, special events, but definitely repeat spending as well.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
knowing how to handle, you know, the new law and how that's gonna work for.
Right. You know, at any time, if anybody has a question about code or how we do our enforcement action, you know, pick up the phone and call us, and, you know, you'll get to the right person that can answer that question so that you have, you know, firsthand information as opposed to secondhand information. There's some resources in there where you can go find the code and read it yourself. You know, it's always a good read to help understand, to help generate questions you may have about it. And I'll admit, there are some conflicts and there are some ambiguities. We try to write those out. One thing I've learned over 4 years is it's extremely hard to write code. You know, it needs to be written in very short, choppy sentences, and it should say you can or you cannot. Anyway, if that's it, I appreciate everybody. Oh, you got something? Oh, if that's it, I appreciate everybody's participation today. Like I say, any questions, comments, give us a call. And I think the Dolce Vita is sponsoring lunch today. So what was the way the code was interpreted? What is actually written? You have to have a proper written authorization. Sewer. So last year, we wrote so that is pure form. You want to be in there? You got to go get the person's authorization. And so the person that has control of the property, he can say whatever he wants to. I'm just handing it down. It's either yes or no. So if you say yes, then anybody can say yes. If he does, so what it comes down to is they send us a letter. If they don't want it in there, they send us a letter. So we're authorized anybody to be there. to say you're gonna get some pushback from members of why. But if you do, this is why I ask people to do it. You politely acknowledge, bow out for the time being, contact us. You now have intimate knowledge of it. You can say, Mansell, I talked with Brian, he says that the winter's end is not going to get your teeth right up on property owner. He sends me a letter that says, I adopt my leaf on my property. What I do is I get in and erase the vendor's end. I try to move it, I'll be honest with you, we're running out of places to move it in Montgomery Street.
So what if, they own the property, the other thing, or if they said, no, then it's not all there, then it's not any, or anybody there for that, from the beach.
And I'll be honest with you. That is the thing that you have, and you ought to do away with one anybody, you ought to do away with because anybody, all of it be available to venue based on the imperative needs. Right.
Yeah. So, conservation, or red, like I say, go find one that has control.
Doesn't apply to public beach. So all that land, all that beachfront and Sea Highlands is all public beach from the code of the hospital. The property line stop in there. We're recognized each other there. And there's always good people disputing this. I know. Your property.
But again, I run my house, so I can't count to be around, but I don't want everybody's beach visit. Right, so I'm doing that, so you're saying that's, what I keep hearing and reading, that said, that they're like, I don't know what they say, that's a backyard, you get control of it, except for that.
Only if I have
I like that better. It's on the news, talking about the whole, bridge and the document, all of that. So it's gonna be,
in most cases, you have tied it down to what's called a reaching kind of crescent shape.
Yeah.
And so if you think about townships